Welcome. I'm Rafael Wright, MIT's president, and I'm honored to join Governor Charlie Baker to kick off Massachusetts STEM Week. This year's theme is See Yourself in STEM, and I will say a few words about what that means to us at MIT in a moment. But first, I want to thank Governor Baker, whose steady science-based leadership is exactly what the Commonwealth needs right now. We have a long way to go to get through the current pandemic, but it is great comfort to be able to count on a leader who is a strong champion of science in action. I would also like to thank Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, Congressman Joe Kennedy, and Dr. Jeffrey Leiden for their dedication and advocacy as co-chairs of the Massachusetts STEM Advisory Council. At MIT, we are committed to helping talented young people reach their full potential in STEM. Later this morning, we will see what that can look like. Brilliant young researchers will tell us about their award-winning project at the Massachusetts Science and Engineering Fair. MIT has welcomed students to campus for the fair since 1949. This year, in the face of the pandemic, dedicated organizers and sponsors quickly pivoted to create this online event so that we could still find a way to gather and honor the state's rising stars in STEM. Like these students and like many of you, I was also drawn to STEM subjects at a young age. And although I was far from Cambridge, growing up in Venezuela, I eventually found myself learning from MIT textbooks. Through these books, I felt an almost electrical connection to MIT. I realized there was a world of other people who love science and engineering and places like MIT where I could join them. That's when I began to see myself in STEM. My life changed the moment I saw that path open up for me. Today, hundreds of nationalities are represented at MIT. We have undergraduate students from all 50 states. Almost 20% are first-generation students, as I was when I attended college, and nearly half are women. In normal times, I could walk with you down MIT's infinite corridor, and you would see there really is a place for you in STEM. STEM technologies will shape our future. You can see this in the tremendous progress in areas like COVID-19 vaccines and treatment, quantum engineering, and fusion energy. And if you understand these technologies, you can help create the future. So we need you to do more than see yourselves in STEM. We invite you to step up and take your place. And now to get STEM Week started, I will turn things over to Governor Baker.
It's one that we certainly amplify during this week, but it also gives us a chance to think about why this is important. Clearly, I want to thank the winners and all of their supporters this year for they are the future. I want to thank the co-chairs of the STEM Advisory Council, Dr. Leiden, as well as Congressman Kennedy. You'll be hearing from both of them. But I want to pick up on what the governor said about STEM is everywhere. And during this pandemic, we have seen it really upfront and close, and perhaps appreciate it even more so when we think about the front line of doctors and nurses and people who stood up to help us from a healthcare perspective. You think about manufacturers who changed their workplaces to make the essential things that we needed to help emergency responders be able to wear face coverings and gowns and gloves, have ventilators available for those who became really sick. I mean, in every aspect of that is a STEM background, whether it was a science background or a technical background. It clearly was so important to all of us as we responded during the height of the pandemic and as we continue to respond all the way through. But when you think about STEM Week, this is the third time we have held this week dedicated to STEM opportunities. And it's really important, I think, this year more than ever. as I come here to this moment as a mother of two teenagers, I can't help but think about every student across our Commonwealth, whether they're at home learning, or they're in a learning pod, or they're partly in school and partly at home, or they're in school full time. I just want to say, I think the students have been hit the hardest in this pandemic because they've really had to change what their expectations were as young people in terms of interacting with friends and teachers and all the activities that were just assumed to be part of their lives. So I just feel as we come to this STEM week, it's such a great opportunity for all of us to give them a little bit more, to allow them to have some fun this week, to try some new things, to learn about careers and jobs that might be known today or that clearly don't even exist today that they could perhaps dream about and plan for. So I just want to thank everybody who's on this call, all of our teams across the Commonwealth, including our STEM networks, for making this week more special than ever. We have over 300 events planned, and there'll be others that we don't even know about that take place. And the one thing about this pandemic is that we've learned that virtual actually brings more opportunities in some ways. When we were talking with our partners in Berkshire County, we said the folks in Berkshire can learn more so what's happening on Cape Cod, or more so what's happening on the North Shore or in central Massachusetts, because there are no transportation and time barriers. So in part, this week is about breaking down barriers, but it's also creating more opportunities. So these events are real. It's also the ability to help educators develop curriculum and have other ways to educate our kids. We know that the reason this is important is because we need the skills and abilities around certain subjects, you know, whether it's science, math, technology, that's critical. But also the piece about problem solving and thinking creatively and critically are also key components of this. And then of course, we want to make sure that every student, no matter where they are, see themselves in careers and opportunities that exist, see themselves potentially at MIT, and see themselves along a pathway toward opportunity in our innovation economy. And that doesn't just happen. And that's one of the reasons why STEM Week is so important, because it allows us to highlight and spotlight things that are important, things that are working, and things we need to do more of. I think about creating a mentorship culture. You clearly know what that is at MIT. Everyone there is a mentor to each other, and of course through the Science and Engineering Fair. Being a host as an employer to an internship, like Jeffrey Leiden at Vertex has done an amazing job in helping kids in inner cities and communities of color engage in internships at Vertex. There might be a student that is in a nearby school, but that's never seen the seaport. And to be able to engage in an internship at Vertex has been extremely powerful. And I had the opportunity to speak to some of the students that were virtually attending the internships over these past few months, and they were great stories. And I just want to thank them for continuing to do their part. I also know that with the pipeline of talent that we have, we need to make sure that that pipeline includes more women and communities of color. We have a strong talent base here in the Commonwealth, people that are super smart with PhDs, and we also need people with technical skills that come out of our vocational technical schools and our community colleges that have the credentials and to do the work. But from credentials to credits, we need all of it, and we need it to be as diverse and full as possible, and making sure that we're reaching to communities that need to have more access to opportunity, which is one of the other things that we hope to use STEM Week for, and then be able to build on this. So while we have the third STEM Week, over 70 years of the Science and Engineering Fair at MIT, STEM is everywhere and it's every day. And this week is just one opportunity for us to highlight and spotlight the things that are working and clearly do more of it over the course of this next year and upcoming years ahead. With that, I'm now going to turn it over to one of my co-chairs and thank him for his leadership, along with Congressman Kennedy, who he will introduce. And again, thank all of the STEM Advisory Council members and the e-board for all of their great work and setting up a phenomenal week for the students across our Commonwealth. With that, I now turn it over to Dr. Jeffrey Lydon.
Well, thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. I want to start by particularly thanking you and Governor Baker and Secretary Pizer for your continuous support of STEM Week, even during this year of the COVID pandemic. You have a lot on your plates, and I think the fact that you've continued all of your efforts really speaks volumes to your support for STEM, and I thank you for that. I also want to thank President Reif for hosting this year's kickoff. I was saying to him earlier, I can't imagine a better place, a better symbol for hosting STEM Week. So thank you very much, President Reif. So as you said, Governor, who would have thought just 1 year ago that STEM Week 2020 would be a virtual event due to the widespread incidence of this new pathogen, COVID-19. But here we are. We're using digital and tech innovation, I think it's worth pointing out, to ensure that kids across the Commonwealth continue to have access to what I think is going to be another world-class STEM Week experience. Obviously, we all know the COVID pandemic has had many terrible effects actually on our communities and our country and the world. But I'd also argue that despite that, there are a few silver linings to what we've learned from the pandemic. And interestingly, I think several of them are relevant to STEM Week. First of all, we just can't forget that our ability to respond so rapidly to this new pathogen was entirely due to the incredible advances in the life sciences that the biomedical community has made just over the last 10 or 20 years. Without things like rapid DNA sequencing, monoclonal antibodies, genetically engineered mice, PCR, those are all new things, by the way. It would have taken us years, not months, to respond to this pandemic, to identify and sequence the virus in 2 weeks, to create rapid PCR and antibody tests in just a month or two. And then, as you said, to manufacture a number of new vaccines, including new modalities, just several months into the pandemic. That's incredible progress. And none of that would have been possible 20 years ago. And so I think we just can't forget that the continuous strong support of this entire biomedical ecosystem, and you know, I always say that Massachusetts is the center of that ecosystem, is really required not only for progress, but for our national health and security. Second of all, just think of the remarkable contributions that digital technology has made to our lives in the pandemic. And it's easy to forget that Zoom didn't exist just 10 years ago. And where would we be without Zoom in terms of running our businesses, running the government, continuing schooling, and even having this 2020 STEM Week? So I think really there's no better argument for strong STEM education and STEM Week than these learnings from the pandemic. Every year I say we're sitting, and the Lieutenant Governor said this earlier, we're sitting in the sea of talent in schools and communities across Massachusetts. And that sometimes that talent is overlooked or wasted. And that's a tremendous missed opportunity for our students, for our Commonwealth, and for our innovation ecosystem. And I would argue it's our job, all of our jobs together, to make sure that every single one of those kids has a strong STEM education in school and out of school. They're going to be the next generation of leaders, as the governor said, who shape our future. And they're the ones who are going to help protect us from the next global health or technology crisis. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to one of our strongest champions for STEM education, my friend, Congressman Joe Kennedy. I've had the pleasure of working with the Congressman on the Mass STEM Council for several years, and he's been just a tremendous partner along with the Lieutenant Governor in these efforts. Maybe that's because he was trained as a scientist and an engineer, and he understands the power of STEM education for our children, our society, and our country. And equally important, he's just passionate about expanding these opportunities for every one of our kids throughout the Commonwealth and throughout the country. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Joe Kennedy.
Dr. Leyden, thank you. As always, my friend, thank you for the kind words and the generous introduction. But thank you for your incredible leadership on the STEM Council as the leading our efforts along, obviously, with Lieutenant Governor Polito. I think it's fair to say, and I think it's already been said, but your willingness to not just invest your own time and effort and energy, but that of Vertex and the enormous credibility that you and the company bring to this effort. And whether that's been engaging directly with the governor and his administration, whether it's been internships for high school students, whether it's been whatever has been asked of you, your consistent willingness to go out there and find opportunities and find ways to join the public and private sector together to make sure that these opportunities expand and continue and proliferate, not just for the good of obviously our businesses here, but for the good of our students, the good of our Commonwealth, the good of the city of Boston, is inspiring. So thank you. Lieutenant Governor, good to see you. Thank you for your, once again, as always, your consistent and steadfast leadership here. Governor, as well, thank you for joining us. And congratulations to everybody as we kick off STEM Week. The opportunity of going close to last in these introductory remarks as you get to hear all the great words that everyone said. The challenge is to come up with something new. So I will learn my lesson here and basically keep it brief. But let me just say that what everybody else said early was a great start. I look forward to kicking this over to Secretary Pizer in a second. But I did just want to take at the risk of belaboring a couple of points here, did just want to take a brief second to point out a couple of things. One is just the enormous talent and potential that these efforts can untap. We were chatting a little bit about this before we went live, but look at the two student presentations that we're going to see, and I promise I'm not going to steal their thunder here. From somebody that was actually trained as an engineer, but then a lawyer, I literally am not sure I could spell the words and the title of either one of them. The first one, a non-invasive optical biosensor diagnosing neonatal anemia. Suvin, I don't know what any of that means, but congratulations and thank you. I very much look forward to hearing what you have to say. And I think I shifted off to a different view here, but I think Srija, it was Srija, excuse me, the second presentation, functionalized polylactide filament for additive manufacturing. These are high school students, and this is what they've done in high school. I'm so glad I do not have to apply to college in this day and age, but look at the innovation and the ingenuity and the talent and the potential that we can unlock and tap into if we provide these students that opportunity, the tools, and that challenge. And that's what this is about. And to be able to do this, obviously, at MIT under the stewardship of Dr. Reif and all that institution represents, and hopefully a number of students that will pass along, Mr. President, through your doors as a result of these efforts. It is incredibly inspiring to see what will come as a result. So really grateful to everybody today. Thank you for your incredibly hard work. Excited to see what the future will bring. And Mr. Secretary, that is your responsibility and your opportunity to be able to make sure we don't screw this all up. So you've done an incredible job here, pulling this all together from so many different, with so many different moving pieces and in the midst of a virtual world. And I'm gonna also highlight Alexis's work and her efforts here too. You've been incredibly well served by her diligence and her talent. So Mr. Secretary, over to you. Thank you for once again shepherding all of these sheep and doing it so well.
Well, thank you, Congressman. Thanks so much for all that you've been doing in Congress, and maybe even more important for all you're currently doing at home. I can tell by the artwork on your wall that you're a home educator, like so many of us have become. And it looks like there's even maybe a botany experiment that you were doing there over your shoulder. So it looks like you're carrying STEM education right into your own home.
That's my cooking, but thank you.
So thank you again. Thank you, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Dr. Leyden, for your leadership in continuing to make STEM a critical priority for the Commonwealth, not just from an education perspective, but from a workforce and economic development perspective too. I also want to join in thanking President Reif and Paul Paravano and MIT for hosting this event and for allowing us to take part this morning in celebrating the incredible achievements of Massachusetts' youngest scientists and engineers. Like last year, the theme of STEM Week is See Yourself in STEM. And the reason we're doubling down on that focus is the reality that our rising generation of students and young workers is increasingly diverse. So in order to give them the opportunities they deserve, and in order to fuel the growth of STEM-related occupations and businesses we need in every region of the Commonwealth, we have to make sure that in both schools and the workplace, STEM is a welcoming and inclusive field, especially for people of color and women who are too often underrepresented in the sciences, technology, engineering, and math professions. I'm in my office today on Beacon Hill, and behind me is the front page of the New York Times from the day after the first moon landing. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I was born in 1956, just about a year before the Russians launched Sputnik and 2 years before the United States formed NASA and initiated the Mercury project. I quite literally grew up with the space age. Watching launches and splashdowns was a vital part of my youth. Those dramatic events, televised live, often in my elementary school classrooms, generated an excitement about STEM that was almost universal. And with the development of the space shuttle program in the 1970s and 80s, we were finally able to see that space travel wasn't just for white male test pilots. Brave pathbreakers like Sally Ride, Guy Bluford, Ron McNair, Ellison Onizuka, and of course, Krista McAuliffe opened the doors of space to all Americans, and together with the establishment of the International Space Station, underscored the importance of space as a place of science, commercial activity, and international collaboration, not just adventure or Cold War competition. Of course, STEM is about much more than space. But that broad public excitement and those role models in the space that the space program provided have unfortunately lost some of their resonance over the years. Ironically, even as the pace of technology has accelerated and the boundaries of science have greatly expanded. Perhaps we've begun just to take too much for granted. And that's why STEM Week is so important. We need to develop educational experiences that can revive that sense of excitement and wonder in discovery and learning that space exploration generated 60 years ago. We need to highlight new role models to create new opportunities for educational pathways, work-based learning, and mentorships to enable a diverse cross-section of young people to pursue STEM careers. And we need to broaden our understanding of the wide array of activities that today form an integral part of what STEM means to our economy, our environment, and society as a whole. And of course, during this difficult time, to our own health and safety. From laboratories to manufacturing floors, from aerospace to agriculture, from software development to finance, and crucially in the time of COVID, from biotech to medical equipment to healthcare, STEM is everywhere, and there are opportunities for everyone to see themselves in STEM. And with that, let me turn it back over to you, Lieutenant Governor.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Pizer, and thank you to your team, especially Alexis Land, for her leadership in organizing this amazing STEM week and all of the work she does with the STEM Advisory Council. So just a shout out to Alexis, thank you. So think about a kickoff, and here we are with these warm, welcoming remarks, the setting offered by President Reif. Well, it wouldn't truly be a kickoff without a fantastic keynote speaker. And I'm certain that when this speaker was a young girl, perhaps middle school or high school, she didn't think then that she would be a world-renowned author of a book called Designing Social Robots, but she is. And at some point along her journey, she developed skills and abilities through access to her subjects. She encountered people, whether in her own personal life or maybe a little bit further away, that inspired her, and eventually found herself on a path toward a subject area involving artificial intelligence, and is doing amazing work at MIT, leading and founding and directing the Personal Robots group at MIT's Media Lab. Socializing a robot. Who would even think that this would be and effort, and that what she is doing with her partners there is truly impactful to health and wellness, to education, to pediatrics, to aging. And it is such a pleasure to know that this is all happening in our backyard at MIT, not too far from where you live as students or where you're getting educated. And to be able to know that you are so close to someone of her abilities, but someone who cares so much. I want to thank Dr. Brazil, not only for your leadership and for the work that you do that's amazing, but for understanding and sincerely carving out a significant amount of your time and your effort to engage young people across our Commonwealth with this opportunity. You know, thinking about how to use i2 Learning and create robot kits, because you're not able to physically get together to do these, perhaps at MIT, assembling these kits and shipping them out to students all across our Commonwealth so that they could have a hands-on virtual experience during STEM week and throughout this school year is truly impactful. You clearly are paying it forward, and we're quite honored, all of us, to be able to introduce Dr. Cynthia Brazil to all of you. With that, Dr. Brazil.
Great. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. It is such a pleasure to be able to share some new and exciting work that MIT has been doing, all about research and outreach and dissemination for K-12 AI education. So we've heard STEM is everywhere. We know that AI is also everywhere. It is transforming economies and markets. It's contributing to the global economy. It's creating new jobs, but it's also disrupting existing jobs. So a lot of excitement and opportunity, but it hasn't been without its challenges as well. And we've been discovering and learning that if AI kind of gets out there unchecked, it turns out that it can encode the biases of societies and cultures. And if that happens, the decisions it makes can actually privilege certain groups over others. We don't want that to happen, obviously. We also know that today the field of AI is not particularly diverse or inclusive. And we also really want to change that to be able to make the opportunity in this incredible new field much more equitable. So this is the world, honestly, right now that our children are growing up, and they are touching and using AI every day, and they often don't even realize it. It's in YouTube, it's in Snapchat, it's in social media. So, we at MIT have come to just recognize that, it's no longer enough for kids, and I would say for citizens, to be digitally literate. They need to be AI literate. And we say AI literate, this is what we mean. We want society, we want our citizens to be able to use AI responsibly. To do that, they need to understand it more. They need to be able to participate in the democratic process around these technologies. And we want to prepare a far more diverse and inclusive group of students to have the potential to become the ethical designers of AI solutions of tomorrow. So faculty, research scientists, graduate students, undergraduate students have all come together from across the Media Lab, from the Schwarzman College of Computing, from Open Learning to really pursue and deliver on this mission. So we are coming together. Our ambition is to create a brand new comprehensive K-12 AI literacy program. So that's curriculum, hands-on activities, that's all project-based learning, teacher training, that we call Responsible AI for Computational Action. And it is bringing together kind of these three big themes in a really new way. So of course, computational thinking, AI literacy and ethics, as well as design thinking and human-centered design. So we position the students as the designers of these kinds of technologies. So they are in this creative, critical thinking position from the get-go. So if we want kids to be able to create amazing things with AI, we got to give them the right tools, right? So fortunately, we're MIT. We've developed some incredible programming platforms that are child and student friendly, things like App Inventor, things like Scratch. We've been now infusing that with these new advanced AI capabilities to give kids access to these tools and technologies. And with them, they're able to do things like not only program, interactives that run in their web browser, but also Android devices, Alexa smart speakers, and robot kits, right? So we're giving them the ability to kind of create skills and things that can actually run on these real-world things, which is super exciting. And then we're bringing the right kinds of tools into these platforms that are super child-friendly, student-friendly, but also really creative and exciting. So I want to just play a video of just one of these kinds of extensions we've done. We've created a custom version of a Scratch programming platform. And this set of blocks is all about allowing kids to program using AI for gestural interfaces. So I will cue the video.
PoseBlocks is a new toolkit for students to create body tracking and motion interactive projects while learning about artificial intelligence. AI systems like Kinect games, Snapchat augmented reality lenses, and Instagram AR filters are some of the most engaging ways students experience AI in their everyday lives. And many students have passions around sports and dance that we can use as entryways to AI concepts. The PoseBlocks toolkit introduces a suite of block-based programming tools that students use to conceptualize, design, build, and reflect on interactive physical movement-based projects. To support this, we've developed a suite of new block-based coding extensions for our online editor, built on top of the open-source Scratch programming library. A new Google Teachable Machine integration allows students to quickly train their own image, pose, or audio classifier models and bring them into their own coding projects to build interactive AI-powered projects of their own devising. Here we're using Teachable Machine to train a new recycling detector which can tell us whether we're holding glass, paper, or plastic. And since all model training and execution are done on the client side, and only these model weights are exported, student privacy is preserved. Now we take this model into our project and respond to the model's image detection. Looks like glass, looks like paper. This lets students make projects like these. 3 more sets of new blocks allow students to create projects with hand, face, and body tracking machine learning models. These blocks allow you to track body parts, finger points, even face parts, and respond to expressions and emotions that are sensed. That allows projects like these. And these. You can make a spray painter with your fingers and your nose is the eraser. Here's a Teachable Machine project where a bunny runs around when you put bunny ears behind you. Here's one that detects when your posture is bad.
Great. So I hope you can appreciate. So this is, a really fun, creative, playful set of tools. We're targeting here upper elementary and middle schools who may not be experts at coding yet. And I just want to share with you a video of now a middle schooler who, using these tools, can actually create a project, of her own passion. So cue the next video, please.
So mine is a book detector. It just tells you about the book and it rating. So if I did this one.
Oh, that's so cool.
Wow. That's
I think
so
that's
cool.
great too.
So this is amazing. So here's a middle schooler who's able to create an application basically where she can just show a book and the agent can tell you about it. And she did this within, a week-long workshop. So again, really empowering tools, creative tools. So I want to just talk through a little bit about the curriculum approach, because I know there's a lot of teachers listening in, just to give them a little more sense of how we've designed these learning experiences. So each module typically happens over the period of a week, and we've actually been designing virtual workshops across a number of curriculum to do this. So we obviously want to introduce students to these core concepts in artificial intelligence. We use these through intuitive metaphors and interactive games so they kind of learn about the mechanics of these algorithms. We then create a lot of hands-on activities where they can go out and experience these things. They can start to see how these algorithms are used in the real world, even play around with it, give them a sense of what the state of the art is and how they're used. Then we also talk about the societal implications, both good and maybe not so good. And we do a lot of discussion around that. And then we empower kids with these tools so they can actually then apply their creativity and critical thinking to make a project using these tools, often positioned as helping someone or doing something for your community. So again, a computational action-oriented project. So going through a quick example now, we actually introduced a curriculum this summer on a new machine learning. This is an advanced machine learning method called GANs, Generative Adversarial Networks. This is when AI can actually get creative, when it can produce new data that you would actually consider to be like, visual art or music or other kinds of things we'll talk about. So we use familiar metaphors. We have kids to play games so they kind of understand how GANs work. Then we have them try out a bunch of things online that use GANs. So GANs can be used to create photorealistic faces of people who don't exist. Or you can kind of, compose a photorealistic image, or you can have it generate music. So, I mean, this is a really, powerful, amazing technology. We often frame it around arts and expression because we want to be able to appeal to a lot of different kinds of kids through a lot of our different modules. We also have kids reflect upon these tools as we use them. So again, there's a lot of discussion around this. Then we talk about societal implication. And one of the important aspects of GANs is this ability to create deep fakes. So if you cue the video, I'll let you learn about deep fakes and how we engage students around that discussion.
Our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time.
Former President Barack Obama, right?
So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right.
Wrong.
You see, I would never say these things, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele.
Comedian Jordan Peele actually produced this video to warn about the future of fake news.
What happens when someone releases a video like this? What are some implications? How does this affect the real world?
They could show it to if it's something really bad, they could frame someone for saying something that they didn't actually say. They could also maybe if there's a president and they have maybe they could pretend they could make a video of something that the president said that wasn't actually real but fake, and then maybe because of that people would start opposing and saying that they don't like the president.
Right, you can kind of frame people, put people in negative lighting, make people say offensive things like a slur, spread rumors around. There's a lot of, negative things you can do with a deep fake.
All right, so with any amazing new technology, there's wonderful things you can do. There's also some pretty, upsetting things you can do. And it's important for kids to understand that. As a final project, it's a creative project. We actually have kids use GANs, tools we've developed, to basically generate a story using GANs. So they create the artwork, they create the text trained on different kinds of styles like Harry Potter or Shakespeare or Dr. Seuss. And we have them reflect upon those stories and kind of the experience of working with GANs to produce something creative. So that's just a snapshot to give you a sense of what these kinds of learning modules look like. Now, we have been very busy creating workshop formats, training teachers, all these kinds of things, both for in-person and now, of course, virtual formats. So for instance, this summer, we were very, very busy. We actually collaborated with Amazon Future Engineer. They have this incredible network of teachers and Title I schools where we wanted to pilot 4 AI workshops we've been developing, things on conversational AI, the gestural interfaces you saw, robotics, and the creative AI that you just saw, where we conducted a series of 8 total workshops. Each was a week long. We offered over 100 hours of curriculum time for kids. We trained 28 teachers. We reached over 150 underserved students, all in this kind of new world of artificial intelligence. So, just to give you a little sense for the teachers out there, what that looked like. Again, our graduate students create all the tools, the curriculum, the learning modules, the teacher training materials. So they are kind of the leaders of these workshops. So from the teachers that we recruited, we would do a pre-work introduction of the module that they signed up for to do for the week. And then every day we followed this format where the main instruction was done through our MIT graduate students, where the teachers served as teaching assistants. And then we did a big debrief with the teachers every day where they gave a lot of feedback in terms of how they thought it went and engagement. And we'd actually take their inputs and we would make changes for the next day in the workshop. We could keep iterating and making it better and better and better. And then at the end of the full week, teachers were sent a survey where they could give us bigger feedback over the overall experience. And then the hope, of course, is they feel ready to bring this to the classroom on their own. So here's just some quotes. Of course, it's the first time you do it, you're going to get, all kinds of feedback. But overall, it was very, very successful. So teachers talked about, they really appreciated how responsive we were to their feedback. They felt inspired. Their students were inspired. They both learned a lot. They thought this was a huge part of digital literacy. They loved the tools. They loved the amount of time kids had to be creative and to be critical, think critically about their projects. So overall, we feel we're really on the right track with this. Now, of course, this is the kickoff of Massachusetts STEM Week. So we got to talk about Massachusetts STEM Week. And my group has been a big fan and supporter where we have actually worked with i2 Learning to bring the first AI and ethics curriculum called How to Train Your Robot to Massachusetts STEM Week. So this is actually a photo taken the first time we offered it. I believe Lieutenant Governor is actually in this photo. It's a surprise visit where we offered How to Train Your Robot as an in-person session. And actually a big reason why we did this for the summer workshops is so we could virtualize this curriculum to get ready for STEM Week. So we've already mailed a lot of robots to kids across Massachusetts and beyond in order to do this curriculum with kids during Massachusetts STEM Week. So it's game on. So to conclude, again, the theme of Massachusetts STEM Week is, see yourself in STEM. We've also been creating a lot of learning modules around thinking about future careers in AI or how AI could be used in your future career. And we're now actually working on a series of videos where we are interviewing just amazing people across many different industries. And I hope you can appreciate from this video, diverse faces, diverse voices. So no matter what kind of kid you are, you can see someone who you can identify with and really see yourself in STEM. So this is something that's in the works and we'll be making it available. So just so everyone knows, everything I've talked about is on this website. It's aieducation.mit.edu. If you're a teacher, if you're a nonprofit, you're free to use these things for free. And if you're interested in working with us around outreach or dissemination, you can email us at aieducation.mit.edu. We are really committed to try to get this out to all students in Massachusetts and the United States. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Brazil, and thank you to all of our speakers in part 1. Stay tuned, part 2 will begin in just a few minutes.
Hi, my name is Helen Rosenfeld, and I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Science and Engineering Fair. I'm here today with my colleague, Rishi Shukla, who is MSEF's. Their prize is unique in that it doesn't only acknowledge the students, but it acknowledges their teacher and their school. So Bill, thank you so much for the company's support. It's an honor to have you here with us.
Well, thank you very much, Helen. It really is a pleasure to be here. I can't think of a better way to start a week than to be participating in this just wonderful event. You know, as you said, we have been a part of MSEF for over 20 years. And this is a part of our community relations program where we partner with over 90 community organizations in Massachusetts focused on topics like STEM, access to care, and other urgent community needs. And, you know, you may ask, well, why do we do this? And the reason we do it is we believe that it's so important to have a partnership with the communities in which we conduct our business. It's not a transaction, it has to be an effort and a partnership. And we believe by doing that, not only the community benefits, but our employees benefit. And more importantly, as you're seeing here today, society can benefit from those strong collaborations that take place. Now, specifically as it relates to MSEF and our involvement, you know, I don't believe there's another time where science has been more important. And the only way, and it's been proven time and time again, the only way we're going to make progress in solving some of the largest scientific challenges, or not even scientific challenges, challenges within the world, is through the use of science. And having more people engaged in asking the question and looking for the truth and looking for answers that are going to take us forward as a society. And I think we see that alive and well here. Diversity of opinion and more people being involved leads to better scientific outcomes. You know, we have the global pandemic going on right now. And when I look at that challenge and how science has been able to, and specifically the Cambridge, Boston, and Massachusetts ecosystem has reacted to that. It's a perfect example of just the absolute power that resides in all of us here. Now, we love this program, and we love the fact that it is uses the science fair model, because we think that it's really important. You have project-based learning and you learn independent research. There's skills development that takes place, not only from the research work that's done, but also the presentation skills that you learn at a science fair. So this is really, to me, the start of the future for us. And I have to say, when I listen to everything that's being said, and when I've heard and read and watched a little bit more about some of the wonderful projects that are coming out of this, it makes me happy, I have to say. I look forward to the future, and there's no challenge that's too big for the bright young minds of today to solve in the future. And this is a really, really important step to get kids involved early so that they can react, see enjoyment in the pursuit of science and truth, and be able to change the world for us. I sleep much better at night knowing that, and I'm just thrilled and honored to be a part of this. So I get to do something now which is, to me, thrilling, to acknowledge the 2020 MathWorks prize winners who you're going to be hearing from in just a moment. Archita Namalakanti and Shrija Bola have, I'll let them tell the story, but I am just absolutely amazed at the incredible thinking, thoughtfulness, and creativity that's gone into this project of theirs. I showed it to my hopefully medical school bound daughter, the video that was done, and she was commenting that she had just learned some of the things they were referencing in university level courses. So it's just amazing. I can't congratulate you enough. and I will turn it over to you now.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Archita Nemali Kunti, and I am a junior at Hopkinton High School.
I'm Srija Bola, and I'm a sophomore at Hopkinton High School.
And for our science fair project during the year of 2019 to 2020, we created a sensor that diagnoses neonatal anemia non-invasively in newborn babies. And the whole idea behind this project really just came in the summer of 2019 when I found out that I was going to have a baby sister. So I wanted to create a sensor that can diagnose a condition that is tested invasively in newborn babies to minimize the amount of stress that newborns go through. So the problem with the neonatal anemia diagnostic test, it's called CBC, it's invasive and it has potential negative side effects on the newborn, such as decreasing cardiovascular reserve and low blood concentrations. So we created a sensor that can diagnose neonatal anemia non-invasively, and it does that by first determining the light absorption of a protein called fetal hemoglobin, and then it calculates the concentration of fetal hemoglobin using a principle called Beer's law. And then it determines whether the patient has anemia based off of the calculated hemoglobin concentration.
So we decided that for our procedure, the baby's finger would be placed inside the sensor, and then their hemoglobin concentration would be calculated. The first problem that we faced during this is that hemoglobin is not the only protein that absorbs light. There's the skin, there's the hormones in the blood, and there's obviously other proteins. So we decided to use a method called photoplethysmography, which is also used in pulse oximetry, in order to only analyze the hemoglobin. So on the right, you can see a graph of how we separated the blood and then the skin absorbance in order to exclusively analyze the hemoglobin. So there's actually two different forms of hemoglobin that we needed to analyze for this, the oxygenated form and the deoxygenated form. So when oxygen is added to hemoglobin, it changes its structure, so it absorbs light in different ways. So in order to analyze these separately, we use their absorbance spectra and compare them against each other in order to separate each of them.
And the sensor also makes sure that the light passing through the finger travels in a straight line. It makes sure that the photons have a low energy, and thereby having them travel in a straight line, and ultimately having the sensor display an accurate result. And then once the sensor takes into account all of these factors that we just described, it then calculates the concentration of fetal hemoglobin using this standard curve, y equals 0.025x, where x represents the concentration of fetal hemoglobin and y the absorbance.
So the standard benchmark for newborns is 13.5 grams per deciliters. So this is what the concentration determined by our sensor would be compared against. So if it's greater than this concentration, the newborn does not have anemia. And if it's less than this concentration, the newborn's diagnosed with anemia. So this is our sensor's design. On the left, it's the white case that surrounds the sensor, and it's used to reflect outside light back out and not interfere with the readings. And on the right, it's a diagram of our sensor that includes its microcontroller, its Bluetooth module, and the two light sources, the infrared and the red light, in order to analyze the oxygenated and hemoglobin, oxygenated and deoxygenated versions. And then the photodetector, which receives the transmitted light.
So the whole process starts off when the sensor is plugged into power. And once it's plugged into power, it starts calculating the light absorbance of the deoxygenated hemoglobin derivative. And then it goes on to determine the light absorption of the oxygenated hemoglobin derivative. And then it calculates the total hemoglobin absorbance and then on to the total hemoglobin concentration using the standard curve. And then it determines anemia by comparing with the standard benchmark. And then it sends the diagnosis to an Android app in a phone, which displays the result.
So the diagnosis is sent through a Bluetooth channel, which is established using our Bluetooth module. So either a 1, a positive result for anemia is sent, or a 0, a negative result saying that the baby does not have anemia. So, and this diagnosis is displayed on the phone as either the baby having anemia or not.
This is the sensor code. It is programmed in C language. And this is the app code. It's programmed in Java using Android app development.
Since we obviously couldn't test our sensor on newborn babies, we had 5 adult subjects. So we knew these subjects' condition beforehand. We knew whether they were anemic or not anemic. And then we did 10 trials on each subject. So we tested our sensor on them 10 times. And with all 50 trials, we found that our sensor's diagnosis matched the subject's actual condition. So we had a 100% accuracy rate.
Thank you all for listening to our project. We just want to say thanks to Sanofi Genzyme for sponsoring this award, and thank you to MCEF for giving us the opportunity to pursue our passion and pursue our research project. So thank you for listening to our project.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, this is Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito. I just want to congratulate both of you for this amazing effort and outcome, truly impactful on the health of babies, inspired by your own personal experience being a big sister and wanting the best for your younger brother or sister, I'm not sure. But I just want to ask you, first of all, you developed your ideas around you have a problem to solve. Can you just elaborate on the problem solving process? You make it look so easy in your presentation, which was beautifully done, but clearly there was a lot of analysis and research and development, maybe some frustration along the way that both of you had to struggle through. Just describe that a little bit for us. I can't hear you. Here you go.
Okay, so we faced many problems in the research biology end and the technology computer science end. For the biology end, we had to take into account all the factors, all of the things that were happening in the finger. We had to make sure that the light traveled in a straight line. We had to take into account the oxygenated and deoxygenated hemoglobin. And, we had to take into account those factors. As for the technology and computer science side, we had to make sure that our algorithm worked and it displayed the correct result. So we had to continuously revise our code and make sure that the results were accurate.
Srisha, I'm sure you had a lot to do with this process.
One of the biggest things that we encountered was that our code wasn't lining up properly, so it wasn't timing itself. And we had to write a lot of revisions in order to have 2 threads of code, which is called multi-threadings, to run simultaneously.
How much time did you spend as a team working through this process?
We had some designated hours at school that we had to attend, but a lot of it was done at home. So we would meet at least twice a week, I think, at least 4 times in the beginning. And we had to establish a plan very quickly. And a lot of it picked up intensity along the end when we had to finish our presentation and get our results.
So toward the end, I know others have questions too. Toward the end, though, you probably had to pivot to a remote setting where you didn't have as much in-person time with each other to solve. So pivoting to something very challenging was something you had to include in your plan.
Yes, especially the presentation part of it, yes.
And a lot of it, we were kind of just going back and forth between our houses and trading the sensor and our poster between each other in order to finish it in time.
So I just thank you to Bill Seibold and the team at Sanofi Genzyme, did your office serve as a mentor role in any of this? It seems like these two are incredible students and thinkers, but was there some guidance along the way that helped them get from one point to the next?
Not with this. We have mentors. We've been having mentors for years and years, and we have served in a mentorship capacity and also in judging at some of these. But just these two are very special people that have just managed to put together just a world-class project, let alone a high school project. So congratulations to them.
Do we have any more time for questions? It strikes me as a sophomore and a junior, you had exposure obviously to science curriculum, but then to take those concepts and apply them to the problem to solve is very advanced thinking. I guess I'm just trying to figure out, how did you learn this? How much research did you do? How did you do that?
Beer's law. We learned it in our chemistry class. So we definitely had to do a lot of research outside of the school, especially in the physics aspect, like the scattering constant. So we spent a lot of time doing research on that. But we started off launching from what we learned in school.
If you could change anything about your education in high school, what advice would you have for me as your lieutenant governor to change or to add to education across the Commonwealth around science, math, engineering, technology?
I would just think to make things more independent and project-based. I think that way students get more excited about what they're doing, and it gets more about learning and discovering new things than about getting a grade.
Great. Maybe I could ask a question to the two of you. So what's next with this project? I mean, this is a technology that you've created, an idea that you've created that has a lot of application to it, and you're sitting in perhaps the greatest place in the world to take an idea and actually turn it into something that people will use perhaps all over the world. So have you thought about what's next?
I'm pursuing a continuation project next year that is related to diagnosing not just anemia, but also something called thalassemia, alpha and beta, which is just a deformation in hemoglobin, and also sickle cell anemia. So not just one test, but two more, so that, newborns don't have to go through so much stress when they're born.
Fantastic.
Awesome. And Archita and Srija, I have a question about the coding part of your project. How did you learn to code? How did you have to teach yourself? Did you learn that in school? Would love to know more about that.
In our school, there's a course called AP Computer Science Principles that Srija is taking right now. I took last year. And then there's also a Java class at our school that we took.
And a lot of it is just searching up videos to teach yourself and like learning formulas and algorithms.
Both of you are in high school. Was there something in middle school that was impactful in terms of your appreciation of your own abilities around science and math? Like, many students in middle school begin to shy away from the harder STEM subjects rather than go and lean in? You obviously leaned in. So is there something we can learn from your experience in middle school that helped you?
Think like the general, so I think like students should get involved more into science when they're in middle school. Get involved in like science fair and just be more curious about learning science.
For me, I didn't do science fair when I was in middle school, but I did get interested in science through my science class. And I found that my science teachers, especially in 7th and 8th grade, were very impactful there because they really encouraged projects and learning on your own. So I kind of applied that into science fair.
Amazing. Thank you both for your incredible presentation. And I know that lots of folks may have questions afterwards to reach out to both of you, but thank you both for your incredible work. And I think I can speak on behalf of all of us that we are very excited to see where you will go next and are very grateful to have you in our state working alongside of us. So a huge thank you to both Archita and Srija. We are so grateful, and both also to Sanofi Genzyme for all of your wonderful work, Bill, and all of this to support this great effort. And with that, we are going to turn over to a video from MathWorks to kick off our second presentation.
Hello. My name is PJ Boardman, and on behalf of MathWorks, I'm very pleased to address you this morning as part of STEM Week's opening ceremony here in our great Commonwealth of Massachusetts. MathWorks is committed to accelerating the pace of engineering and science by ensuring that students and professionals around the world have the best possible tools for design and innovation to increase human knowledge and to profoundly improve our standard of living. To do this, we strongly believe we need diversity, equity, and inclusion in STEM education and in our workforce. Today, more than ever before, the call for equality and social reform underscores the importance of diversity in STEM professions and the imperative to inspire students of all genders and races to pursue STEM studies and careers. This imperative is reflected in this year's Massachusetts STEM Week theme of See Yourself in STEM. It's not just about breaking through barriers, it's about shattering stereotypes. And it's also about the essential need for role models and mentors, particularly for students from underrepresented groups. MathWorks has a long history of developing and supporting STEM education programs worldwide. Through these programs, our staff engages with students through hands-on projects, mentoring, and sharing career experiences, with the goal of inspiring them to explore and to achieve more. We are so proud to partner with organizations like MSEF who share these goals with us. Our partnership goes back more than a decade, and we are so happy to have contributed to the growth and success of the program over the years. Each year, we sponsor scholarships for teachers to participate in MSEF's Curious Minds initiatives. It's a professional development program aimed at integrating science and engineering practices into curricula. Over the years, our staff has volunteered as judges at the MSEF middle and high school fairs and participated in the expo with interactive demos. Through these fairs, students had the opportunity to apply the same methods and critical thinking used by professionals to innovate, to challenge conventions, and to advance our understanding of the world. A great example of one such student is this year's MSEF MathWorks awardee, Suvin Sundararajan, a senior from Westfield High School. When Suvin was just a junior, he designed a process for synthesizing filament in fused deposition modeling. His hard work and dedication to explore STEM beyond the classroom is impressive. Not only is Suvin an accomplished student, but he also won a first-place award at the International Science and Engineering Fair last year. On behalf of MathWorks, I'd like to send our sincere congratulations to Suvin and to all the teachers and students who are doing such extraordinary work in these times. You are truly our heroes, and you inspire us each day as you build our next generation of scientists and engineers. I'd now like to invite Suvin to share a bit more about his MSEF project, and I want to wish all of you an amazing experience during STEM Week. Suvin, cheers to you. The floor is now yours.
All right, thank you very much. It is an honor to receive this first place MathWorks Award at the State Science Fair and represent Westfield. My name is Subin Sunrajan, and let's begin. So my project this year was functionalized polylactide filament for additive manufacturing. And this is a continuation within 3 years. And I actually wanted to address a lot of things in this project. Some of the main things I wanted to decide on was about the societal needs for safer plastics. We all know that the main problems are that most plastics aren't reusable, and a lot of them really contribute badly to pollution. We also have a lesser known issue about flame retardants, as most of them are halogenated, which contain fluorines, bromines, and chlorides, which release toxic chemicals. And so these two problems really made me want to make this better. Like, I wanted to make this feel a lot better and incorporate this in 3D printing. And some good examples of this are like the PFAS, which contaminated drinking water, a known halogenated flame retardant, as well as increasing global warming, as we can see in the West Coast. So what I did is I created a filament that can be used for 3D printing that improves flame retardants and develop a modular approach that can be used to incorporate other project properties in the future, because that's what we want to do. I want to set the standards for how we do this in the future, because PLA is a hard material to work with. PLA is the most common filament for additive manufacturing. And the bottom shows a manufacturing process of how I went from the raw materials all the way to the FDM 3D printing on the right. To synthesize the flame retardant, we actually have to do this because it is not a compound available commercially. To do this, we synthesize using 2 monomers, BHTB and BPA, and combine them through a process and made a polymer. Now, a polymer is a series of long chains of repeating units, and this is how we did it through a reaction. And as you can see on the right, this is the reaction in progress. And this non-halogenated compound is perfectly safe as it burns, which is a major selling point, and is non-toxic. So once we create this compound, we then have to synthesize the filament itself. Now, we can't do it with the raw materials. We have to do a lot of different processes within it. So first we take the raw materials and then put it in a batch mixer. This machine melts and mixes to create a homogeneous mixture, what is what we want. Now, these 2 compounds, PLA and the deoxybenzoate copolymer, are both miscible, which means they blend very well, which is something I discovered in this. After we have this compound, we get this nice gooey liquid, which we can then put in an extruder. An extruder takes this and then outputs like a filament, a thin line that can be used with consistent diameter. Now, this part actually was the part that had a lot of difficulty in the project because it was kind of like, it really didn't work well. So I actually had to design a little bit of the robotics kit to actually pull the filament. Professor Brazil's touching story about the AI and robotics really inspired me as well. And this is something that played a big role in saving the project because we could be able to have consistent filament. The reason why we need a consistent filament is actually for the printer, because without it, it wouldn't work. Before we can get to the printer though, we have to actually CAD model the designs we want to use for the printer. I use software, which is a free one called Tinkercad, but you can also use other ones such as Autodesk or Inventor Pro. And you can create these 3D models that actually are really nice and then transfer them to the 3D printer. These models were both made by me. Once we have the models, we then can convert it onto the printer. And on the left is an example of the roll I made. This is more than 2 meters of filament that had to be extruded out. And this was put onto the 3D printer. After you 3D print this is going on the same settings as normal PLA, which makes it a lot easier for the end user. We then have a couple things I printed here. Now, a fire hydrant is here for irony purposes because this is going to be a flame test. And also we have a thin filament rod, or a thin tensile rod that can be used for testing. I know time is short, so I just wanted to show a couple of the main characterization I did, but trust me, there's a lot of them here. But this is called FTIR, or Fourier Transform Infrared. This is a way we can measure the spectrum of these compounds. Now, we wanted to measure the compounds because, simply put, we need to make sure that our blend that I made has both of them incorporated. The top is PLA and the bottom is deoxybenzoate copolymer, and the middle is my blend. Based on these circles, you can see that different groups, such as the ketone group, are actually incorporated in different parts of the polymer, and each little peak represents a potential group in the compound in the molecule. And this is useful to ensure that, yes, this is indeed the polymer we want. We also had to do thermal analysis because, of course, flame retardants, fire, we should probably do that. So one of the main things I tested was the heat release capacity. Heat release capacity, it determines how well it burns and the rate at which heat is released. This is very important because low values predict low flammability, which is what you want in consumer applications. over here, you can see this is PLA, the original sample we had, as well as the flame retardant PLA that I made. Previous attempts have tried to do this, but it hasn't fallen short because they use small molecules. Using this long polymer chain, we were able to decrease the heat release by 20%, which is a lot more than what has been previously done. And as you can see here on the right, this is a comparison to other polyesters, which is the type of polymer this is. There's a lot of different types of polymers. This is one of them, as well as other filaments if you're into 3D printing, such as ABS and other flame retardants, which are a lot more expensive. My flame retardant here performs, like I said, 20% better, and also in a category where is it acceptable for flame retardants in commercial applications. There's also other data I did, such as TGA, which measured the amount of weight percent at the end, and others such as DSC, which characterized how exothermic or endothermic, meaning it releases certain heat at different times. Those aren't shown here, but if you'd like more information, please let me know. Now, what can we do with this? Now that we have a polymer that works, what can we do? I showed that this successfully implemented flame retardants into this filament, and it can be used for a lot of different fields, such as aerospace, residential construction, and more. Actually, one of the most prominent examples of polymers in this is the Boeing Dreamliner, which is a well-known plane that uses polymer parts for a lot of different aspects, such as panels, bezels, and cast materials. I mean, polymers are in everyday life, and I'm sure you all know this, but polymers play a huge role. Without them, we won't be able to have a running society at this point. The flame retardant materials are also useful in housing, and especially useful now during like the wildfires in the West. And this is something that can be useful in more applications. Now, I want to mention that science isn't done alone. As I'm sure the other group knows, and we all know that there's a lot of people that provide help. And even though a lot of the ideas were made, there are still many people I have to thank in this. First off, I have to thank my high school, Westfield High, for supporting my research all the way through, as well as the UMass Polymer Science and Engineering Department for letting me use their labs and their mentors. Professor Todd Emmerich, Elizabeth Studs, and Chris Cueto were very helpful mentors in this progress to help me guide along the way. And of course, I have to thank my family here. I hope you all enjoyed that, and I'm really excited for the future of polymers, and this is one step out of many. This is, like I said, been 3 years of this project, and it's going to be continue on from here.
That's fantastic, Subin. How did it feel to have your name right on that the form that you created for the 3D printer?
It was pretty cool. Like, it was a lot of I honestly, that day was kind of bored. So I was like, why don't I just put my name here, see how it works? And it actually was more complicated because you think just when you write your name on something, like on a piece of paper, it just prints off there. But when you're 3D printing, it adds a whole nother complexity to it. Like,
well, you should be proud of that, right? You own that. I mean, that was your thinking and the others that assisted you. Why do you think your project came to the top of the pile? Like, you won the award with some pretty significant competition in this science and engineering fair.
I think a couple things can be attributed to that. Like, first off, I really am enthusiastic about this project. Like, I think that I want that to carry through, and I'm pretty sure hopefully it can through this presentation, because this is something I deeply care about. Like, I really wanted to have work on polymers. I remember freshman year, I didn't even know a whole lot about science in general. I honestly, when I went to the science fair, I didn't know that MCEF existed. And it was something working on thin filaments and thinking, hey, I could do a little more with this instead of because I really looked up a project for my freshman year and then realized, wait a minute, there's more to this. Let me explore it. And I think that enthusiasm is really what drove my project and allowed me to get a lot of data analysis and also do other stuff and contact mentors and network.
That was the answer I was looking for, right? I mean, the competition and the award is just a small piece of it. It really is your passion for math and the science that went behind your developing and discovering a new process that can really be impactful.
Exactly. Yeah,
so, Yep. Expand on that.
Okay, so it's really something, but it's also meeting new people, meeting like-minded people and learning how they do stuff where you can adapt a little bit here and there. You can learn more about the science process as a whole, because actually when I first started this project, a year ago, this is a continuation, I didn't know chemistry at all. So it was all learning from the ground up because I didn't take AP Chem and I didn't take computer science. So this is an interdisciplinary project that requires a lot of attention. And I wanted to address a bunch of different topics in here. So I just started learning things here and there.
But how much of this did you discover through your classroom and your teachers efforts with you versus what you did outside of the classroom? I mean, coming up with the analysis around a long polymer chain versus small molecule and arriving at the conclusion you did to then design your project around is pretty huge.
Yep. I see what you're saying. So at the high school, I got access to like lab resources, like a little bit and here and there. And then I really took it forward by working with UMass and then learning more about how other scientists function, like how they work. And it was a lot of it actually reading a lot of papers on my own time. Like I read probably, I think I have a list. I think I've read around 200 or 300 research papers just about this topic, just to like learn more, because I need, like, if I'm going to do a project on this and say like, okay, I'm making this better filament, better polymer, I do want to be credible and I do want to have that knowledge to back it up. So it requires a lot of research, and a lot of that research was done on my own time. My mentors really helped in guiding me where to go, but also providing the training required for some of these machines. Like some of these complex machines, I think the NMRs that I use, like which are like nuclear magnetic resonance, they're like multi-million-dollar machines. And people are training me on how to use them because these are pretty essential in a lot of chemistry labs. And this is something, learning that experience through mentorship and learning those, how to use those experience, allowed me to understand how they function. Like, and I could start getting ideas off it saying, oh, maybe I could use this analysis to prove this point. And then once I prove that point, maybe I can use something else behind that to also further push what I'm saying.
It's just interesting because if you did not have this exposure before high school, but then your project included, you know, principles around engineering and math and AI and chemistry and so many different subjects are involved in your project. How did you know how to solve this?
I didn't. I'm going to be honest. I was sitting here in December of last year, sitting, what am I doing? I'm sitting here 8 weeks. I've been trying to figure out this filament problem where it wasn't even a chemistry problem. It was just pulling out the filament. And I thought that's really simple. And a lot of these issues, like a lot of these thinking of interdisciplinary like ideas like chemistry or physics, come down to problems in the project. I mean, if it all worked on the first try, I wouldn't need to use robotics. I wouldn't need to make complicated systems for that. But because of these problems, it allowed me to explore further in these fields, learn more about it, because I didn't really program. I honestly didn't like programming at all 4 or 5 years back. And now that I realized how useful it is, I can start combining different systems here. This is something I'm working on. Like as we speak, like yesterday I was tinkering with this to make something better for the system and go on that idea of making a better puller for this filament system. And
is that one of the reasons why you think problems don't get solved? Because people get frustrated and give up versus persevere through, which is something that you did?
I think, yeah, that's a really good point, because a lot of problems are genuinely hard. Like they're really difficult to solve. And I did get frustrated at times too. Like it sometimes is when something simple really doesn't work, but it's a lot of different steps. And something I learned from my mentor this year was that chemistry, like if you're doing newer chemistry, 9 out of the 10 things fail. And that's something, going with that expectation of, okay, this is I'm gonna fail, this may or may not work, is probably the attitude I'd go towards and suggest others, because I know there are high schools, I know my own class is watching this, and people are wondering, how do I do a science fair like this? And the first thing to do is accept the failures, accept that that's gonna happen. Look, this project, I was ready to say this was gonna not work. I had that option in this. I sort of got lucky after a lot of perseverance of trial and error that this ended up working. But in that, you come with new ideas, and it's a really cool process, honestly.
I guess not being afraid to fail is part of that too.
Yep. That's the first step towards success too. Like, and even like, the thing is, I'm really glad to experience these kinds of failures like firsthand, because this happens like every other year. But like, this was the first year where I was stuck for 8-9 weeks, just not knowing what to do, and that made me rethink a lot of stuff too, like the process. Like when it's easy to say, okay, this seems like impressive, this seems like a lot of work. But when you sit through and realize like the amount of problems and a lot of things, you start to have a deeper understanding of the topic as a whole.
That's incredible, Subin. Thank you so much for all of those questions. I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague at MIT, Rohan.
Yeah, Subin, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I think that comment you made at the end about failure being one of the main things of doing scientific research and engineering research is very apt. Every science engineer watching this right now is nodding their head vigorously, because that is one of the biggest points of science and engineering, is to never giving up when you fail 99 out of 100 times. I had one other question. So it sounds like you've participated, so as one of the MCEF winners, you've participated in the International Science and Engineering Fairs now for a few years. Could you maybe talk about what your experience has been when you were able to go last year and what this year was like? And what's the coolest part of being able to attend an International Science and Engineering Fair?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I know there's some like loud noise outside for lawn mowing, so please ignore that. But ISEF allowed me to connect with other mentors, other people like around Massachusetts. Like there were really great people on like the Boston side and like the middle central Massachusetts. And it was allowed everybody to get connected in Arizona. It was also a new place. I never went to the west side of the US. And I was like, oh my God, it's 100 degrees. So I was experiencing a different life there, but also just, it was great being there with collected with so many people. Like I think there were 2,000 people at this fair participating and competing. And you also meet a lot of judges there. Like it is actually very similar to MCEF, and hats off to MCEF for making it very similar to ISEF too, because I felt really prepared for this fair. It was 12 judges, which took hours and hours, but I was already prepared for like, because we went through like 5 or 6 at MCEF. And it was really cool because I actually got a judge from Massachusetts. And it made it even better because you can have these connections with different judges, but the MCEF really prepared me for making those connections outside. And one of the things being virtual, like I know MCEF was virtual, and it actually was a really good transition because it's like sort of like a different competition where you have to adapt to presenting your work, to how can you market the ideas and show, yes, this is what we did in a short amount of time.
Great, thank you. So many things you're talking about really represent the characteristics of a good science and engineer. And same thing with Archita and Srija, that flexibility and adaptability is one of the best qualities you've definitely shown through all of your projects. If we don't have any other questions, I just want to say thank you again, Suvin, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you to MathWorks for sponsoring this prize. And to end off this second hour, I would like to hand it back to Helen Rosenfeld, the Executive Director for MCEF, who is going to share with us a few other opportunities MCEF is going to be hosting later on during this Massachusetts STEM Week. Helen?
Great. Thank you, Rohan. And thank you to Suvin, to Archita and Srija for really digging into this. And I think they looked a little shell-shocked when I asked them to shift their year-long research into 5 minutes speaking points. And you've done an exceptional job of making it in, putting it in layman's terms for all of us. And your enthusiasm is infectious, and we're just really pleased to have you in our circle. So thank you. I also just want to extend a few more thanks before we wrap up. I want to use this opportunity to thank MIT President Reif and Paul Parvano. Thank you so much for serving as hosts of our fair for the past 71 years. MIT has been our valued partner, and they provide both this inspiration and aspirational model for our students who convene from across the Commonwealth in the pursuit of science and engineering. And thanks to our supporters. We were honored to have Sanofi Genzyme and MathWorks with us today. I want to also let Cabot Corporation share in the spotlight because they've sponsored our middle school fair for over 20 years. And there are countless of other institutions who add tremendous value to the institutional and student experience, whether as judges, coaches, or underwriters. And it takes an ecosystem to do this work. Thank you, Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito. Thank you to the STEM co-chairs, Dr. Leiden and Congressman Kennedy, and to Secretary Pizer for prioritizing STEM education. And thank you to the teachers, the administrators, the parents, and most importantly, the students who put in the hard work and whose curiosity, persistence, and innovation are going to lead us into a very exciting future. So you can find us at scifair.com and get informed. And if you're interested in getting more involved, please email us at info@scifair.com. You can join us later this week. On Thursday, we're having 2 of our regional sessions. One is a Metro North session. The other is a Central Mass session, both on Thursday afternoon. You can find details about that on the STEM Week website. And I just really want to thank everyone for having us join today. It's been a pleasure.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Helen. And I just want to give a couple other thank yous as we wrap up this morning. So a huge thank you to MCEF, to MIT, to all of our speakers this morning. My name is Alexis Legan, and I serve as the director of the Massachusetts STEM Advisory Council. Despite every challenge put in front of them, our regional STEM network managers across the Commonwealth have pushed through and worked diligently to organize a robust, engaging, and inclusive STEM week, and I could not be more grateful for all of them. Also, a big thank you to MK Montgomery on my team working alongside me here at EOE, working to make sure that STEM Week programming is accessible in a virtual world, so thank you. Now more than ever, equity and inclusion in STEM learning and in STEM sectors is critical, and my hope is that this week will serve as a catalyst for these conversations, opportunities, and a space for action that will continue beyond STEM Week. Fueled by the passion of our incredible young students, Archita, Srija, and Suvin included, and through STEM learning, my hope is that these conversations and opportunities contribute to leaving the Commonwealth and the world a better place for all than how we found it. So for a full listing of over 300 events, activities, lessons throughout the week, please visit www.massstemweek.org and follow along on social media at MassSTEMWeek on Twitter and Instagram. So thank you all so much. A huge thank you to my fellow MC Rohan here with me, and happy STEM Week, everyone.